How does this work if I'm adopted? Really great question. Let's unpack this. Grace, thank you so much for your question. There was another comment that you had that preceded this talking about ADHD, and you don't know if it's coming from your the family who adopted you, or if it's actually in your epigenetics. Here's how I see this. Bold statement, but from what I've seen in sessions, the data is pointing to that ADHD is a trauma response. Yes, there are deficiencies, but I believe those are also symptoms. So ADHD is the ability and the inability to have focus. You get lost in certain patterning. It's a time function. So I've said this before. I've even managed this myself with, quote unquote, undiagnosed ADHD and being a resource kid when I was younger, being held back in kindergarten, all this other shit. I have a video coming out on this. So I didn't know what was going on because I didn't know how to render myself here. So first, I would want to look at the underlying pattern. Typically with ADHD, there is a lack or sacrifice pattern running or a deep sense of abandonment. So that abandonment program would typically be from the maternal line. So I would start looking and going down the maternal line and start mapping it. I would be able to kind of get down to the root cause of how you are creating your reality here. Typically with adopted parents, they'll run very similar frequencies to the biological family. The difference is I would be able to tell from a timeline perspective, a multiple reality perspective, that something like this had occurred because there would be a traumatic response in the nervous system typically, because these things present as dissociation, feeling like you don't belong, self-sacrifice patterns, imposter syndrome, things like this. Then there's information that gets projected onto you from the adopted family. That's where things get interesting. Are you getting kicked out of time because it is a trauma response, or are you getting kicked out of time because the family is actually injecting a whole lot of their information into your field and it's pushing you out? So are you doing double the work? No, not necessarily, because X marks the square. It's a complementary pattern and frequency, symbiotic relationship, let's say. Like there's no accident that your family absolutely was connected to you, for example, because at soul level, you agreed to all these different parameters, right? You agreed that you wanted to overcome certain levels of patterning, and this family is going to help you actually facilitate that ascension. Not your biological family wasn't going to necessarily be able to do that for you. So at soul level, you agreed to these things. I hope that makes sense. What should I do next?